I woke up on the wet floor, and she was already there, leaning over me, whispering. Her voice was like wind through broken glass. Not words, not really, just the suggestion of them. Slippery syllables that slid across my skin and made my teeth hurt. Her hair hung in thick, dripping ropes, veiling her face completely, and she was so close I could smell the mildew clinging to her. I tried to sit up, but the room spun. My head throbbed. My clothes were damp. My mouth tasted like old metal. This wasn't my room. It wasn't even a room. It was rotting. Wooden walls bloated with moisture. Gray wallpaper peeling like sunburnt skin. The floorboards beneath me were warped and soaked, littered with damp leaves. Something dripped steadily from the ceiling, a rhythm too precise to be natural. My heart stuttered. I blinked hard. She was gone. I scrambled backward until my spine hit the wall. My breath came in short, shallow gasps, the kind that don't do anything. I tried to remember what happened last night. My birthday, right? My friends, the drinks, the ride out here, the cabin. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare. Something about an old witch house they found on some online forum. We were all laughing. Now they were gone. I stood, shakily. My legs ached like I'd run miles barefoot. There was a shattered mirror hanging crooked on the far wall. Its surface so fogged I could barely make out my reflection. But the shape behind me, pale and thin, barely a blur, made me turn. No one. The room had one window, filthy, smeared with condensation and grime. I wiped a corner clean with my sleeve and peered out. Woods. Nothing but trees in every direction. Pines tall and still. But the way they leaned in toward the cabin, as if listening, made my skin crawl. I pressed my forehead to the glass and scanned for any movement. Behind me, floorboards creaked. I spun. Again, nothing. Except the door at the end of the hallway was open now. Just slightly. I was sure it was closed when I woke up. I took a step toward it, then froze. Something had been scratched into the wood next to the frame. Dozens of symbols, overlapping and jagged, carved with something sharp. Circles inside of circles, broken arrows, and one that looked like an eye with something dripping from it. The hallway beyond the door was darker than it should have been, even in the morning light. I called out, "Tyler? Emily?" But my voice sounded too small, too swallowed. No answer. I checked my pockets. No phone, no wallet, just a ripped wrapper from one of those cheap plastic shot bottles. A faint memory of Emily laughing, shoving it into my hand. "One for the road," she said. My stomach turned. My mouth still dry, I moved down the hallway. Each step echoed unnaturally. There was another door at the end, barely ajar. I pushed it open with the edge of my foot. A bedroom, or what used to be one. The bed frame was broken, the mattress sagging in the middle. The walls were smeared with black streaks, like something had been dragged across them with dirty hands. But it was the writing on the floor that made me stop. Choose wisely. It was written over and over in ash or soot, every letter uneven but desperate. And in the middle of the words, a drawing, crude but clear. The girl, the long black hair, the white dress, the dripping. Something moved in the corner. I looked up, and she was there again, standing this time. No whispering, no twitching, just standing, still as stone. Except now, she was facing me. Even though her hair covered everything, I could feel her eyes. My knees locked, my body trembling. I turned to run, and the hallway behind me had changed. It wasn't the same. The door I came through was gone. I backed away slowly, her head tilted just slightly, the wet sound of her neck popping under the movement. Couldn't breathe. The air had gone still, so still it rang in my ears. And then, finally, she whispered again. But this time I understood. "If you don't choose me, you'll never leave." I ran, blind, full speed into the dark, through doorways that didn't lead to where they should, past rooms I'd never seen before. My breath scraped the back of my throat. The walls pulsed. Furniture shifted when I wasn't looking. Every mirror showed something wrong. My face, but with eyes rolled back, blood trickling from my nose. And always her, standing at the edge of sight, always closer. I must have opened the same door 6 times. But it never led to the front. Never outside. The rooms behind it kept changing. Kitchen, bedroom, hallway. Then that same kitchen again, but with the stove turned backward and a sink full of teeth. No matter how fast or slow I moved, the layout of the cabin made less and less sense. Like the walls were folding in on themselves when I wasn't looking. Like the place was rearranging me. At some point I stopped running. I don't know how long it had been. Hours? Minutes? I collapsed onto the floor of what looked like a living room, though the furniture was too old and too wrong to feel like anyone had ever actually lived there. A record player sat in the corner, spinning nothing. The fireplace was filled with black feathers. And on the wall, drawn in something that had dried the color of rust, those same symbols. Circles. Eyes. That phrase again, choose wisely. I pressed my hands to my temples, squeezing, trying to force the night before to reassemble itself in my head like a puzzle I knew I'd lost a piece of. I remembered the car ride, Tyler blasting music, Emily hanging out the window, screaming into the woods. One of them, maybe Zach, had said something about the witch house, how nobody went near it after what happened back in the 90s. I laughed. They all laughed. But I remembered now, there was no joke in Zach's face when he said it. We parked, took the trail. They were drinking, throwing beer cans at trees, filming everything. I didn't want to go inside. I said that, didn't I? Hadn't I? Something buzzed in my pocket. My phone. I hadn't realized it was there. Cold and slick with moisture, like it had been submerged. The screen flickered to life, but it was wrong. Off somehow, like the backlight was pulsing instead of steady. 1 bar of battery. No signal. A single message blinked on screen. Don't pick her. No number. No contact name. Just that. I stared at it, frozen. A second message arrived. If you choose her, you stay. If you don't, she follows. My fingers trembled. I tried to reply, "Who is this? What's going on?" But before I could send it, the phone died. Just blinked out. Dead. Powerless. Cold. I dropped it. Footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate. Like someone dragging themselves forward just enough to be heard. Not fast. Not urgent. Confident. I stood, back toward the far wall. My hand brushed against a dusty curtain. And when I pulled it aside, I found another door. This one was narrow, almost hidden, like a pantry door, but it creaked open easily. A staircase behind it, leading downward into blackness. Something about it felt colder than the rest of the house. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere, like the space didn't belong. Like it was older than the rest. I stepped down, one creaking stair at a time. The air grew stiller the farther I went. At the bottom, a small, low-ceilinged cellar. Shelves along the walls stacked with mason jars. Most were empty. Some weren't. I didn't look too closely. Symbols etched into the floor, drawn in chalk. A circle surrounded by uneven triangles. In the center of it, an old wooden chair. And on the walls, more writing. Not in English. Not in any language I recognized. But it felt like it meant something. The way it wrapped around the room, top to bottom, like a prayer too dangerous to say aloud. The girl wasn't here. Not yet. But I saw something else. Photographs, taped to the wall behind the chair. Some old, yellowed. Some fresh. Faces. All teenagers. Some smiling. Some not. I recognized 2 of them. Emily. Zach. My throat tightened. I took a step forward, reaching out to touch one of the photos, and the light changed. Just a flicker, like the whole room blinked. Behind me, the chair creaked. I turned. She was sitting in it. Not moving. Not speaking. Just waiting. Water pooled around the base of the chair, though I hadn't heard it drip. Her dress clung to her legs, soaked and filthy. Her head bowed low under the veil of black hair. And I could feel it again, the whispering. Not with my ears, but in my mind. Like she was whispering straight into the center of me. Covered my ears. "What do you want?" She tilted her head slowly. The sound of her bones shifting was too loud in the silence. Then she raised one hand, just a single finger, pointing at the photos on the wall. She was asking me to choose. One of them? One of the others? Or me? My stomach twisted. I shook my head, backing away, nearly tripping over the bottom stair. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not choosing anything." Her hand dropped. She didn't move again, but I could feel it in the room, the pressure. Like I'd made the wrong answer. Like something had started. The cellar didn't breathe. It didn't move. It watched. I backed up the stairs 1 foot at a time, never turning my back on her, the girl in the chair. She hadn't moved, hadn't twitched, hadn't whispered again. But her head had tilted slightly more since I first saw her. Just barely. Just enough to be sure it wasn't my imagination. That's what terrified me most. She didn't need to move quickly. She had time. When I reached the top step, the door slammed shut by itself. Darkness. I gasped and fell back against the doorframe, clawing for the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. The wood felt soft beneath my fingertips, almost wet. I pounded on it, shouting, but the sound didn't echo. It just stopped. Then came the whisper. Not hers. Not this time. It was a different voice, raspier. "Lower. You already chose." I froze. "What?" The voice came from somewhere inside the walls, inside my head, inside the air itself. "She offered you the chair. You turned it down. That's still a choice." I stumbled back into the hallway, dizzy. Everything inside me wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to run to. The cabin was folding in tighter with every step. Doors led to places I hadn't been before, attics where the ceiling sloped too low, bathrooms with mirrors that showed things behind me that weren't there. And in every mirror, every window pane, every slick surface, she was there. Not directly, not always fully visible. But the veil of black hair, the white dress soaked through, the slight angle of her head, it was always there. Sometimes reflected just over my shoulder, sometimes in the glass behind me even when I was alone. I smashed the mirror in the hallway with my elbow. Glass scattered across the floor, but her reflection remained. Unbroken, hanging in midair. I ran again. Found a room with boarded windows. The light that came through the cracks felt colder than the air inside. My breath fogged even though I wasn't shivering. I looked down and realized I was barefoot now. I didn't remember losing my shoes. Or my shirt. My clothes were changing without me noticing. So was the house. The wallpaper now moved slightly, like it was breathing. The door frames had narrowed. Everything felt closer. Then I heard the whispers again. But not hers. Dozens of them. Surrounding me. Male and female, some sobbing, some murmuring. Some just repeating the same phrase over and over. Choose wisely. Choose wisely. Choose wisely. In the corner of the room, the shadows peeled away. Figures emerged. Human-shaped, but broken, backs bent at impossible angles, heads twisted too far, some of them crawling because their legs didn't bend right. Their eyes were wide and milky, mouths slightly agape like they'd forgotten how to speak. One of them raised a hand toward me, trembling. "Don't pick her," it rasped. The others whispered in agreement. "Don't sit in the chair. Don't say yes." I didn't choose. "I'm still here. You only get one chance." One. I stepped back, heart hammering, until my spine hit the doorframe. My voice cracked. "I'm not choosing anything. I just want to leave." One of them, a tall woman with her arms dragging behind her, shook her head slowly. "If you don't choose, you never leave." Then, behind them, she appeared again. No warning. No sound. Just there. Standing in the doorway, her soaked hair now clinging to her face in strands, revealing the pale curve of her cheek and just the corner of her mouth. She didn't speak. Not this time. She just opened her mouth wide and slow, like she was inhaling something that wasn't air. And every figure in the room turned toward her. They began to twitch. One by one. Heads snapping. Fingers spasming. Their bodies jerking violently like they were being pulled apart from inside. I ran. I don't remember how I got to the front door, only that it was open when it hadn't been before. A pale light poured in from outside. I didn't think. I didn't care if it was a trap. I ran through it, feeling the air tear past my ears, the ground thumping under my feet. And then I was outside. Just like that. The forest was dead quiet. Still. And I kept running. Branches sliced at my arms. My lungs felt like they were caving in. But I ran and ran until I saw movement up ahead, figures standing between the trees. Tyler. Emily. Zach. I froze mid-step. Relief and confusion fighting in my chest. They were just standing there. All three of them. Pale, smiling. Hey. I called, staggering toward them. Where did you go? What the hell is happening? They didn't answer. Just stared. No blinking. No breathing. Then I noticed it behind them, partially hidden by the trees. She was standing there. Again. Same distance. Same stillness. Waiting. I didn't move at first. Couldn't. My legs were trembling beneath me, barely keeping me upright. My heart pounded so loud it muffled the silence around me, and the cold in the air wasn't just outside, it was inside me, like something had crawled into my chest and frozen there. Tyler stepped forward. Slowly. Too slowly. Like his feet weren't his. His face still wore that same open, frozen smile, like someone had carved it into him and forgotten to stop. Dude, he said, voice calm and hollow, we were looking for you. Emily nodded behind him, her eyes wide and far too dry. You ran off. Zach was just staring at me. Not blinking. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I couldn't stop staring at his eyes, they weren't right. Too glassy. Too still. Like the lake behind our high school in winter when the surface looks solid but the ice is paper thin. My throat was tight. I woke up in the cabin. Alone. You guys left me there. No, Tyler said a little too quickly. You came outside. You sat in the chair. Emily smiled wider. You said yes. I took a step back. No, I didn't. I never said yes. That silence again. Heavy and unnatural. Like the woods were holding their breath. Then Zach spoke. But it wasn't his voice. She heard you thinking it. I stumbled back, hands up, breath catching in my throat. What are you? None of them answered. Because they didn't have to. Behind them, she was closer now. Just enough to see the edges of her face between the curtain of her hair. Pale skin stretched too tightly over sharp bones. Her mouth still slightly open, as if caught mid-breath. The forest was shifting. Trees that had stood one way a moment ago were now leaning, bending inward. The canopy above thickened, darkened, blotting out the sky like an eyelid slowly closing. I turned and ran again. This time, the woods didn't fight me. No thorns grabbed at my clothes. No trees blocked my path. It was like the forest wanted me to run. But I could feel her behind me. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Just that pressure, thick, pressing into the back of my neck, urging me forward while somehow holding me in place at the same time. My vision swam with every step. After what felt like miles, I saw the road. The car. Our car. It was parked just as I remembered it, slightly crooked on the side of the dirt shoulder. I didn't even check the doors. I threw myself into the back seat and slammed the door shut, locking every latch, ducking down and covering my head like a child hiding from a storm. It took a full minute for the silence to register. Too quiet. I peeked up slowly. The forest was still. Empty. The car smelled faintly of beer and sweat and burnt plastic. Someone had left a hoodie in the front seat. Tyler's, I think. My phone, still dead, was clutched tight in my hand as if I'd been holding it the whole time. I told myself I was safe. I had made it out. That's when I saw them again. Across the road, just beyond the tree line. All three of them. Standing perfectly still. I held my breath, hoping they'd disappear. But instead, they lifted their arms. At the same time. And pointed behind me. I turned. Slowly. She was sitting in the front passenger seat. Not looking at me. Just staring forward. Still wet. Still silent. And smiling. No teeth. Just the curve of her lips, too wide, too calm. I didn't scream. Couldn't. All I could do was stare as she slowly tilted her head toward me, slow enough that I heard every wet crack of her neck, and whispered something. It wasn't English. It wasn't language at all. It was thought. Soundless. Cold. And I understood it in my bones. You can leave. But I'll still be here. Then she faded. Not like smoke. Like memory. One blink and she was gone. I sat there for hours. Maybe more. Just breathing. Listening. Trying to remember who I was before this. Eventually, I started the car. It worked. It shouldn't have. But it did. And I drove away without looking back. I didn't go to the police. I didn't call my friend's parents. I didn't do anything. Because some part of me already knew. They weren't coming back. I didn't go home right away. I don't know why. Maybe because I wasn't sure if I still could. Not in the way that mattered. I stopped at a gas station somewhere along the highway, sat in the car for 20 minutes just staring at the pump and never got out. I watched people come and go, watched them talk and laugh and slam their car doors like none of it meant anything. And for a second, I wondered if I still existed in the same way they did. When I did finally drive back into town, the sky had gone gray. I parked in my driveway, went inside, sat on my bed, and waited for something to feel normal. It never did. The first thing I did was call Zach. Straight to voicemail. Then Emily. Same thing. Tyler's phone rang twice. Then silence. I waited an hour. Then I drove to Tyler's house. His car wasn't in the driveway. Neither was his dad's truck. No lights on in the windows. I rang the bell once, then again. No answer. The third time, I pounded on the door until my hand ached. But no one came. The same thing happened at Emily's place. And Zach's. 3 houses. 3 dead ends. And that's when it started to hit me. They were gone. Not like they disappeared that morning or that weekend. Gone like they never existed here. No missing posters. No panicked parents. No news reports. No whispers at school. Nothing. It was like I was the only one who remembered them. I even asked around casually, trying to sound normal. Hey, you guys seen Zach lately? Zach who? The more I asked, the worse it got. People gave me these looks. Polite confusion. Mild concern. One teacher even pulled me aside and asked if I was managing my stress okay. And in the back of every conversation, I heard it again. That whisper. Not out loud. In the static between thoughts. You left. They didn't. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd wake up in that cabin again, sometimes in the hallway, sometimes back in the cellar. Sometimes she'd be there already. Sometimes I'd have to wait. But the dreams always ended the same. With her behind me, whispering something I couldn't remember the moment I woke. After the third night, I started seeing her while I was awake. In the windows of moving cars. In reflections that didn't belong to me. Once, in a darkened classroom window, I saw her standing just outside, her hand pressed flat against the glass. I never heard her footsteps. I never heard anything. But her presence came with a stillness I recognized. A breath held too long. The kind of silence that presses against your skull until you can hear your own blood moving. I tried to tell myself it was guilt. A hallucination. That maybe we had all gone to the cabin and something happened, maybe a fire, maybe a fall, maybe too much to drink, and they just died. Maybe I survived and I was losing my mind trying to make sense of it. That would have been easier to believe. But the symbols. They started showing up here. Carved into the underside of my desk. Drawn in dust on the mirror. Scrawled in condensation on the bathroom window, 3 perfect circles joined by a single jagged line. One night I found them scratched into the palm of my own hand. I hadn't done it. I would have known. But there they were. Faint. But deep enough to feel. And that's when I knew she wasn't done with me. She had let me go. But she had followed. I stopped going to school. I didn't tell anyone. I just stopped. No one called. No one came by. The few messages I got were from classmates I barely knew. Hey, you okay? Heard you were sick. Wanna play Warzone later? But nothing real. Nothing from people who remembered who Tyler was. Or Emily. Or Zach. That's what haunted me most, how cleanly the world had erased them. Like the house had swallowed them whole and then rinsed its hands. I tried researching the cabin. Searched every keyword I could think of. Abandoned cabin, woods, Oregon forest, witch house, teens missing near Oak Valley, symbols, possession, ritual. I even found a few obscure forums, dead threads buried deep in pages no one reads. Some of them described a place just like it. Off trail. Always damp. The floor always wet even in the summer. One post from 2008 had a hand-drawn image, those same 3 circles I'd seen carved into my palm, joined by that jagged line like a lightning bolt. The caption read, "Binding mark. Pact of rebirth. Once chosen, it can't be undone." Below that, "If she appears to you outside the house, you were meant to stay." I slammed the laptop shut. There was a knock at the window. I didn't turn. I didn't have to. I could already feel the cold spreading across the room. That breathless silence again. I turned off the light and waited. The knock didn't come again. But in the dark, just before sleep overtook me, I heard it. Not a whisper. Not a word. But a sound. A chair. Creaking. Slowly turning. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I drove for hours. No destination. Just anywhere the trees didn't look like they were leaning in to listen. I ended up back near the edge of the woods, not far from where we parked the car that night. I parked, got out, and just stood there breathing. There was no reason to go back. No hope. Nothing to find. But I wasn't looking for hope. I was looking for answers. I followed the trail again. It was overgrown now, like months had passed. More than months, maybe. Nothing looked quite the same. I passed a rotting tree I swore we walked by before, but now it was hollowed out and full of mud. The air felt thinner. The cabin was still there. Of course it was. It didn't look old anymore. It looked ancient. Wrong. The boards looked warped, like they'd been pulled from some other building entirely. The windows were clouded, sagging slightly like they were too tired to reflect light anymore. Moss hung from the roof like wet hair. I stepped inside. It was empty. No sound. No echoes. And yet, I could feel them. Tyler, Emily, Zach. They were in the walls. In the rot. In the dust. Something had bound them here. And it had almost bound me. There was no blood. No sign of struggle. No remains. Just the chair. Still in the cellar. Still waiting. I didn't go down. I didn't need to. Because she was already there. Not in the room. In my mind. A whisper threading itself behind my thoughts. Choose again. I ran. I don't know how I made it out. The woods blurred around me like the trees were trying to hold me back, dragging their branches across my arms, pulling at my jacket. I didn't stop until I was back at the car, gasping. And then she was there again, standing behind the trees. Watching. Waiting. But she didn't follow this time. Because she didn't have to. She was already with me. I moved 2 weeks later, packed everything I could fit into my trunk and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared same way they did. Only I still had a name. Still had a face in the mirror. At least I thought I did. For a while, things were quiet. I found a tiny rental apartment in a town nobody's ever heard of. Got a job stocking shelves overnight at a 24-hour grocery store. Sleep during the day, work at night. No one asked questions. No one looked too closely. It was exactly what I needed. But peace isn't real. Not when she's still with you. It started small, barely there. A shadow that didn't match the shape of my body. A reflection in a window where there shouldn't have been one. The sound of water dripping when no faucets were running. Then came the dreams again. Only they weren't dreams anymore. I would wake up drenched, my sheets soaked through, floorboards beneath my bed warped from moisture. One night, I stepped into the bathroom and slipped, cut my elbow open on the tile. When I pulled the shower curtain aside, the tub was full. Ice-cold water. And something floating just beneath the surface, long and dark and moving with the slow rhythm of breath. But when I blinked, it was gone. I stopped sleeping. I started seeing her in the aisles at work. Just flashes, white fabric vanishing behind a row of cereal boxes, the sound of slow footsteps dragging across linoleum in the break room. My manager asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. I couldn't explain that I was being haunted by something that didn't live in this world. Because I wasn't being haunted. I was being followed. I realized that one night as I was driving home. It was just past 3 a.m. and the road was dead empty, not a single car in either direction. The headlights caught something standing at the edge of the trees just before the turnoff to my street. Her. She didn't move. She didn't even lift her head. She just stood there, waiting. And then she blinked. The first time I'd ever seen her do it. That's when I knew she wasn't outside of me anymore. She was watching through me. Later that week, I drove back to town. I don't know what I thought I was going to find. Some kind of evidence. Maybe a chance to undo it all. But I needed to know if they were still out there, if any part of them remained. I found them. Or what was left. Standing in the exact same spot in the woods where I last saw them. Tyler, Emily, Zach. Still pale. Still smiling. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. And behind them, just barely visible through the trees, she stood again. Closer this time. She raised one hand. Not a threat. Not a wave. A reminder that I hadn't escaped. I'd been released. And only for now. I left. Drove until the tank was nearly empty. Parked behind a gas station and sat there for hours staring at my own reflection in the side mirror. Except it wasn't mine anymore. Because in the mirror, my eyes were too dark. Too still. My mouth curled into a smile I didn't feel. And behind me, I could see her. closer than ever. Whispering. Always whispering. But now I think I'm starting to understand what she's saying. And I know one day soon I'll whisper it back. Because you don't leave her. She leaves with you. And once you've been chosen, you always belong to the house.